Hello, welcome to tutorial 171 in this series of tutorials that focus on TradeStation Easy Language. If you're interested in this sort of thing, please go to markplex.com. That's markplex.com, where you'll find a lot more materials, many of them free, and you can subscribe to Markplex there. Also, subscribe to this video sharing service, whichever it is, YouTube, Rumble, wherever you are, then please subscribe here as well. So today I was asked by a Gold Pass member about creating a program that calculates correlation but takes account, or rather excludes, bars where there isn't an equivalent bar on data 1 and data 2. As you can see on the screen at the moment, I've got two symbols applied to the chart, but one of those is quite thinly traded, or seems to be, and you can see that there are some gaps in the bars. So let's first of all, I just want to show you the standard function, and I've got that open here in my TradeStation development environment, correlation. And what that does, if you open it up, this is just the standard TradeStation thing, is it goes through over a length, which would be the length that you want to analyze. And it has two data streams, what they've called in-depth and depth. And what it's doing is saying, is this bar of in-depth greater than the previous bar of in-depth? And is this bar of depth greater or equal to the previous bar of depth? So independent greater or equal to, dependent greater or equal to, and or it says in-depth can be less than the in-depth the bar before, and depth less than depth the bar before. And what it does, it goes back through a number of bars for the length that you're trying to analyze, and for each one where that is the case, then we get a increment to matches, and then that data is used to calculate the correlation. Now, this is fine, but what we find is that for situations where we've got missing bars, then what happens is we're not really comparing like with like. So just to explain that, what I've done in the program that we're looking at today, which is going to be tutorial 171, is I've added a little routine down here, which is currently commented out. And what I'm going to do, is just very simply, is it just goes through the data on the screen on the last bar, just so we don't get overrun by data. And it prints out the value of the time of data 1 and the time of data 2. So I'm just going to verify that, and got this applied to the chart. Now this might be a little confusing because I think I've got it applied more than once. So let me just go back, and if that is the case, well, let's just look at this data to start with. So starting at 0, you'll see that already we have a problem. We're comparing the 11 o'clock with the 10:55, then the 10:55 with the 10:25. So in other words, what we're doing is we're not comparing like with like. So what I've done in this program is, rather than that, is to use the data and create two arrays. So for example, it's quite a good example here. You'll see that for the first bar of data 1, there is not an equivalent, or at least not at the moment, of data 2. So we would ignore that. And we move on, the same for this one, then the same for this one. Now this one, there is an equivalent bar, so that would be placed into an array. We would then ignore this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, because there are no equivalent data 2 bars, and we would add this to the array, and we'd add the number to the array equivalent to the length, and then calculate a correlation. Now this is probably somewhat of an extreme example, but just demonstrates how the program works. So let's go and look at the indicator that I've created here and got applied to the chart. Let's just go to the top. Some comments there to explain it a little more. And it is going to be, or it is available for download. Essentially the same sort of thing as the original program, but now what I've done is added some more variables. For example, a couple of datetime variables, double variables rather than the object variables, and also a couple of dynamic arrays. So the first thing we do is when we, in one statement, we clear the print log and then we set the size of those dynamic arrays, because we now know what the length is, what length we're going to be analyzing, which is set here, and we can then set those arrays. And then what we do is we have a little routine. Now what the trick is, or what the trick is here, is we need to exclude the bars in either data 1 or data 2 that do not have an equivalent in the other data stream. And we do that using a while statement. I'm running this on the bar status 1 equals 2, so at the end of each bar. And what we do is we reset count to 1, value 1 to 0, and value 2 to 0. Then we have this while statement. And we say while count is less than or equal to length plus 1. And then I've also included some inequalities for value 2 and value 1, just so that we don't get a situation where we get what the program thinks is an infinite loop. Then we calculate for the date time on data 1 and the date time on data 2 the date time equivalent, and that is, we're talking Julian date time, not the new object date time. So we're calculating the Julian date time, which is a double, and we're using this calculation here, which calculates essentially the number of years since 1900, then a decimal point, and then the fraction of the 24 hours. And then we do this test, and we say if data 1, or if date time 1, dt1 is equal to dt2, in other words, we've got a bar on each chart which match, then we go through and we add that data to the array. So we add data 1, the close of data 1 to the data 1 array, which is CORR data 1 for that particular count, and we do the same for the data from data 2. And then we increment value 1, value 2, and count. So that's, I think, fairly straightforward. If we have the data, we want to add it to the array. Now, what if there is not an equivalent bar for that date time? Well, if that is the case, if date time 1 is greater than date time 2, and remember that when these things print, they don't leave a gap or say, oh, date time 2 is null or something. They just put in the next value, whatever that is. So we're saying if date time 1 is greater than date time 2, in other words, the date time 2, we've missed a few bars in data 2, then we just increment value 1. And similarly, if the date time 1, in other words, the bar of date time 1 is less than date time 2, in other words, we're missing some bars in the data 1, then we increment value 2. And to explain this, you probably need to get a piece of paper and just look at how this would work if you missed a few bars out. But what we can do, we can just test that it is actually working, and we can do that by uncommenting. What I'm going to do is comment this little print routine. I'll leave these in the program if you wish to download it, and create another routine here. And what this does is it goes from value 3 equals 0 to length, and it just prints out the values that have been stored in the array. And we're doing this on the last bar on the chart. Of course, as we go through the chart, it's doing it on every bar, but we only need one sample to demonstrate this. So I'm just going to verify that, and then let's go back to the chart, and hopefully we might see this working. So if we go through here, the first one, that doesn't have an equivalent, the second one doesn't have an equivalent, third one, and then finally we get here, and you'll see the value of data 1 is 158, close 158, and the equivalent value of data 2 is 27.23, and you can see that here. Now we're going to have to skip a few bars, and the next one should be a close of 157.53 with an equivalent bar in data 2 of 27.09, and you'll see that is the case. And if you go through the bars, you'll see that we do have the equivalent bars. And then fortunately for us, to calculate the correlation, there is a standard correlation function, correlation array, that we can just put into that the correlation data 1 and correlation data 2 over the length that we're looking. And bear in mind that in TradeStation, the array functions generally or always omit the 0 element in the array, and we're not putting things in that 0 element, as you will see, because we started counter from 1. So the first value would be put in the value 1. We wouldn't be putting something in the 0 position. And then we plot the values, and also a couple of other values just to potentially use for alerts or something, which I have not included in this program. This program will work on TradeStation and MultiCharts, and I hope you find it useful. If you have any questions, then please email me. Thank you very much.